Sweet mother of God, I'm shaking so hard I can barely hold this phone. My throat was raw. I woke up screaming at 3:14 a.m. It felt like I'd swallowed broken glass. The sheets were soaked in cold sweat. They were twisted around my legs like a rope. I sat bolt upright in bed. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The air conditioner is broken again. It was 90 degrees in the bedroom. Sticky, oppressive. The air smelled like wet moss and old paper. I couldn't breathe. I was gasping for air like I was drowning. I could still see her. My mother. She was standing in the old nursery. It was exactly how it looked 30 years ago. The wallpaper was peeling in long strips. The crib was empty. She was pointing at the floor. Her finger was translucent. A ghostly blue light was coming from the floorboards. She looked terrified. She was wearing that floral dress she was buried in. The one with the blood on the collar. I remember that stain so vividly. It looked like a dark handprint on her neck. She kept whispering, "The floor, Source, the floor, he's coming." Her voice was so thin. It sounded like dry leaves skittering on pavement. I tried to move in the dream. I couldn't. I was paralyzed. But the worst part was the smell. Thick, sweet cigar smoke. It was choking me. It clung to the back of my throat. It smelled expensive, like burnt vanilla and old leather. I hate that smell. I reached for the glass of water on my nightstand. My hand was shaking so bad it knocked the glass over. It shattered on the hardwood. Water pooled on the floorboards. I stared at the puddle. It looked just like the blue light in my dream. The red digits on the clock glowed in the dark. 3:14 a.m. I stared at them trying to breathe. Just a nightmare. Just a stupid nightmare. But that smell was still there. It was hanging in the humid air of my bedroom. It was real. I looked over at my desk. The eviction notice was sitting there. Alistair's lawyer sent it yesterday. Vacate the premises immediately. Bastard. Then I heard it. Downstairs. A heavy fist slamming against the front door. Bam! 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 The sound went through the floorboards. It rattled the teeth in my head. It wasn't a knock. It was an assault. Someone was trying to break in. I froze. I wasn't breathing. The house is old. Savannah settles at night. Wood creaks. Pipes groan. But this was different. This was violence. Who's at my door at 3 a.m.? I thought about Marcus. My childhood friend. He's a cop now. But if Marcus was here, he'd call my name. He wouldn't bang like he wanted to kill me. You know that feeling when your gut screams at you to run? That primal lizard brain kicking in? Yeah, that was me. I grabbed the heavy brass lamp from my nightstand. It's an antique, a heavy Victorian thing. I held it like a weapon. I took a breath. The cigar smoke was stronger now. It was drifting up the stairs. It wasn't a dream memory. It was happening right now. Only one person I know smokes those things. Only one person. Suddenly the banging stopped. The silence was heavier than the noise. It was suffocating. I sat there in the dark, clutching the lamp. The sweat was cold on my back. I waited for a voice. A car door. Anything. Nothing. Just the sound of the swamp outside my window. Then I heard it. A metallic scrape, like a key scratching the lock. My blood turned ice. I don't have a spare key outside. I never did. I lost mine last week. I haven't replaced the lock yet. But he has a key. He always did. The lock clicked. The deadbolt turned. The handle started to twist. The lock turned. Click. The deadbolt slid back with a metallic scrape. I scrambled backward across the duvet, my hands gripping the cold brass lamp. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The door flew open. It slammed into the wall with a crash. Heavy boots hit the hardwood floor. Thud! 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 Then the smell hit me. Burnt vanilla and old leather. It was him. Uncle Alistair. I crept out of my bedroom door. Socks lighting on the floorboards. I stopped at the top of the staircase. The banister was cold under my fingers. Down in the foyer, the chandelier lights were blindingly bright. He was pacing in circles, shouting at the empty room. "This ends tomorrow," he roared. His voice bounced off the walls. "I'm selling this dump, every brick of it." I crouched down, making myself small in the shadow of the hall table. The house was alive with noise. The old pipes rattling in the walls. It felt like the mansion itself was screaming at me to run, but I couldn't move. My feet were glued to the runner rug. Sweet mother of God, he looks manic. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in sweatpants and a trench coat. It was raining outside. Water was dripping from his hair onto the marble floor. He thinks he owns this place. He thinks he can just barge in. But legally, the eviction isn't even processed yet. Does he care about the law? Look at him. I pulled my phone from the pocket of my bathrobe. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Swiped open the Ring app. The notification was blinking red. Motion detected. Front porch. 3:15 a.m. I pressed play. The grainy night vision filled my screen. There was Alistair, pounding on the wood with his fist. Open this damn door! The audio captured him screaming. The timestamp at the bottom of the screen flickered. 3:15 a.m. Just 2 minutes ago. In the video, his face was distorted by the wide-angle lens, but the anger, that was crystal clear. Pure, unfiltered rage. And then I saw his other hand. He was holding a crowbar. A heavy iron demolition bar? Who brings a crowbar to a family dispute at 3 a.m.? You know that feeling when your stomach just drops out? That was me. Sitting there in the dark, watching the replay. He wasn't here to talk. He was here to break things. Maybe break me. I looked over the banister again. He was at the bottom of the stairs. He was looking up. Right into the shadows where I was hiding. I held my breath. Don't move. Don't blink. He sniffed the air like a dog catching a scent. I smell you, girl, he growled. He started climbing the stairs, slowly, one step at a time. The wood groaned under his weight. That familiar creak. I pressed my back against the hallway wall. The lamp was heavy in my hand. The base was solid brass. If he comes up here, I have to use it. I never thought I'd be the type to defend myself with violence, but looking at that footage, the way he gripped that crowbar, he wants something from this house. Something hidden. And he's terrified I'll find it first. I remembered the funeral. The way Alistair stood in the back of the church. Not crying, just watching Mum, like he was waiting for something. He took another step, then another. His shadow stretched long across the landing, a monster in the dark. I tightened my grip on the lamp. My palms were sweating. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I call the cops? I have. But Marcus is 20 minutes away. And Alistair is 10 seconds away from the top step. He didn't come for a chat. He came to make sure I didn't find what Mom hid. But it's too late for that, isn't it? He was standing right there, at the top of the stairs. The light from the wall sconce caught the side of his face. He looked manic. Wild. That iron crowbar hung down by his leg like a dead weight. I lifted the heavy brass lamp higher. My arms were shaking so bad they vibrated against the air. Put it down, Sasirsa, he hissed. He didn't step closer. He just stared at me, like I was a bug he needed to squash. Marcus is coming, I lied. My voice cracked. I sounded pathetic, but it worked. He hesitated. He looked at the lamp in my hand. Then he looked at the floorboards. I'll be back, he said, with the sheriff. And a locksmith. You're done here. He turned around. His heavy boots thudded back down the stairs. Then the front door slammed. Silence. Just the sound of my own heart trying to break my ribs. I slid down the wall. The lamp clattered to the floor. Sweet mother of God. I was still alive, but for how long? I sat there for an hour, just staring at the empty stairwell. The grandfather clock chimed in the foyer 4 times. It was 4 a.m. The smell of wet moss filled the hallway. It was coming from him, lingering in the air like a ghost. I heard his car engine start outside, then tires screeching away down the cobblestones. He's going to kill me, I know it. That silence, it felt just like the funeral. 1994. It was raining that day too. You know that kind of cold Georgia rain that soaks you to the bone? I was 11 years old, standing in a black dress that was itchy and way too big for me. We were at Bonaventure Cemetery. The Spanish moss was dripping wet onto the mahogany casket. I looked down at my shoes. My patent leather, Mary Jane's, were covered in gray mud, but Alistair's shoes, they were perfectly clean. Shiny black leather. Even though the ground was a swamp, he wasn't crying. He was standing under a big black umbrella, smirking. I looked at him then. I saw it, a look of relief, like a heavy suitcase had been lifted off his shoulders. I remember the tears mixing with the rain on my face. Salty and cold. I remember the sound of the dirt hitting the wood. Thump. 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 That sound is still in my nightmares. Later that day at the house, the lawyers came. They sat in our dusty living room. I remember the smell of their wet wool coats, mixed with the scent of stale coffee and old paper. They talked about debts, about the business going under, about how Dad fell. I sat on the stairs, the very same stairs he was just climbing tonight. I was rubbing my arm. I had a scar there from falling off my bike the week before. I remember tracing it with my thumb. A little jagged white line on my tan skin. It hurt to touch. But not as much as the lies coming from the living room. The estate is insolvent, Alistair said. His voice was smooth, too smooth. I'll take the business. It's only fair. Sean was my brother after all. He took everything. The company, the money, the respect. He left us with this rotting house. And a lifetime of questions. Have you ever felt that burning rage when you know someone is lying to your face? I sat on the floor tonight. Looking at the peeling wallpaper, I started shaking. Not from the cold, but from the anger bubbling up in my throat. I looked at the top step, the place where he died. They said Dad slipped. They said he was drunk. But Dad never drank before noon, and I remembered something else. Something I buried for 30 years. I saw Alistair's shoes on the stairs that day. They were polished black leather, shiny enough to see your reflection in, just like the boots he wore tonight. I watched his taillights fade down the long driveway. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew I didn't have much time. He said he was bringing the sheriff. That meant maybe an hour, maybe less, I didn't think. I just moved. I ran straight to Mom's jewelry box on the vanity. The mahogany was splintered where Alistair had forced it open. Necklaces were tangled on the floor, pearls scattered like dropped teeth. But I knew Alistair. He was sloppy when he was frantic. I felt for the secret latch. It was still there. Click. The false bottom popped open. There it was, a small brass key. He missed it. He missed the one thing that mattered. I looked at my phone. 4:15 a.m. The sun wasn't up yet. The house felt huge and empty and incredibly hostile. I grabbed the key and ran to the hallway. The nursery door was at the very end. It had been locked since the day she died. 3 months of silence behind that oak door. My hands were sweating. The metal slipped against my skin. I forced the key into the lock. Turn. A heavy click echoed in the quiet house. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me instantly. Dried lavender and old paper. It was like walking into a time capsule. The dust was so thick it looked like fog. I stepped inside. The floor creaked under my sneakers. It took me back to 1995. I was 8 years old. I remembered standing in this doorway. I watched Mom turn this fairy key. Her hands were shaking. She looked terrified. I never knew why. Until now. The rocking chair sat in the corner. A crocheted blanket was draped over the back. It looked like Mom just got up. But the phone was disconnected 30 years ago. I walked to the antique vanity against the wall. The glass was clouded with age. I wiped it with my sleeve. That's when I saw it. A piece of yellowed paper taped to the back. I peeled it off gently. A Polaroid. It was Mom and Dad in this very room. They were young. They were happy. Really smiling. Dad was holding a blue envelope. A legal envelope. The kind you keep a will in. I held it up to the moonlight. Dad was wearing his gray suit, the one he was buried in. This must have been taken that morning. The morning he died. The blue envelope had a wax seal, red wax with the O'Malley crest. Dad didn't use the crest unless it was official. Important business, business that got him killed. I want you to look at someone you love. Imagine finding out their whole life was a lie. It guts you. It absolutely guts you. I turned the photo over, nothing written on the back. I looked down at the floor. Alistair was standing right here earlier. He was staring at the wood. What did he see? I took a step forward. Creak. Dust puffed up around my shoe. I took another step. Squawk. Old wood complains. But then my foot hit a board near the wall. C sharp. A clear, high-pitched musical note. My breath caught in my throat. That note. That exact pitch. It was the note Mom used to hum when she was rocking me to sleep. She called it her safe note. I looked at the spot again. In my dream, Mom was standing right here. She was pointing at the floor. She wasn't pointing at the vanity. She was pointing at this specific board. And honestly, I don't believe in ghosts. But this felt like a map. It felt like she left breadcrumbs. I knelt down slowly. I pressed my palm against the rough wood. The floorboards groaned under my weight. But one groan was different, a hollow echo, right where Mom was standing in my dream. Have you ever had to destroy a piece of history to save yourself? That is what this felt like. I scrambled over to the cold fireplace on the far wall. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped the heavy iron poker. The handle was worn smooth. Dad used to stoke the fire with this on Christmas mornings. Now it was a weapon, or a tool. I did not know which anymore. I knelt back down on the dusty floorboards. The wood felt damp against my bare knees. It smelled like old rot and fear in that room, like secrets kept for too long. I jammed the poker tip into the crack. The floorboard groaned. It did not want to open. It fought me, like it was protecting whatever was underneath. You know that feeling when you are doing something you know you should not? That was me. But I could not stop. I kept thinking about those shiny black shoes. Alistair's shoes at the funeral. Pristine. Not a single speck of red Georgia clay on them. Dad died in the mud that day. Alistair walked away clean. How is that even possible? It meant he was not there when Dad fell. Or maybe he was. And he just cleaned up really well. Sweet Mother of God. He cleaned up. He hid the evidence then. Just like I am trying to hide this now. I looked over at my laptop on the vanity. The screen showed me a terrified woman in a dark room gripping a poker. I had set it up to record him. But it was recording me. At least if I disappear, Marcus will know what happened here. I pushed down hard on the poker handle, leaned all my weight on it. The iron slipped, gouged a deep scratch into the hardwood. My shoulders screamed in pain. Sweat was dripping off my nose, hitting the floor. Plop, plop. I felt it suddenly, a chill on the back of my neck, like someone standing right behind me. Breathing. I did not look. I could not look. If I looked, I might see her, or worse, I might see him coming back up those stairs. The webcam light on my laptop was blinking in the corner, a steady, accusing red eye. With a sickening crack, the wood splintered. The board popped up. The sound was loud, too loud. It echoed through the empty nursery. I froze. I held my breath, listening for the front door. Nothing. Just the grandfather clock ticking downstairs. Tick, tock, time running out. I reached into the dark hole. My fingers brushed against something metal. It was not just dust and cobwebs. There was a box down there. I pulled it out into the dim light. It was heavier than it looked. An old rusted cash box, but the initials on the front caught my breath, etched into the brass plate. S.O. I ran my thumb over the letters. S.O. The metal was cold against my skin. It smelled like old pennies. Rust flaked off onto my hands, staining my skin orange. Not my initials. Not Sarah Say O'Malley. My father's name was Sean. Who was S.O.? Could it be Sarah O'Malley? Grandma? She died before I was born, and this is where it gets really messed up. The lock was already broken. Someone had opened this before and put it back. Do you think he knew it was here? Tell me in the comments, because I think Alistair found this years ago. And he left it. Why leave it unless he wanted me to find it? Why not just take it? Unless the box itself is a trap. The lock was dangling, broken. Someone had been here before me, and they left the box behind. Why? I stared at the metal latch. It was snapped clean in half. My fingers were shaking so bad I grabbed the rusted edge. It was cold, sharp. I lifted the lid. It groaned. A metal-on-metal sound that echoed in the nursery. I flinched. I looked at the closed bedroom door. Just shadows. No footsteps. Not yet. I looked back down. No cash. No stacks of $100 bills. Just a pile of paper. And something glinting gold. I pulled the stack out. Envelopes. Tied with a rubber band that had turned to goo. It snapped against my wrist. A sharp little sting. I ignored it. I turned the top one over. The paper was thick. Expensive. Watermarked. The date hit me like a punch to the gut. October 14th, 1994. The day before Dad died. I unfolded the letter. The ink was fading to brown. But the words were clear. Vinnie, take care of the loose end. I felt dizzy. The room started to tilt, make it look like an accident, a fall down the stairs. I read it again. I need the deed in my name by Friday. Don't disappoint me. The signature at the bottom was simple, Ollie, but I knew that A, I've seen it 1,000 times. It was Alistair, my mother's brother. He hired a hitman. He paid to have my father thrown down those stairs. I shoved the letter into my robe pocket. My hands were sweating, cold sweat. I reached back into the box. Something heavy was at the bottom. I lifted it out. A key. Solid gold. It was heavy in my palm. Cold. The head was intricate. Victorian scrollwork. It didn't look like it opened a door. It looked like it opened a vault. Or a safe deposit box. Where was the key to this key? Then I saw the tape. A microcassette. It was tucked into the corner. Dust coated the black plastic. The little wheels were gray with age. There was a label. White paper. Peeling at the edges. Black Sharpie handwriting. The negotiation Octu 12. 2 days before the murder. You know that feeling where the ground falls out from under you? That was this. The letter was bad. It was evidence. But a tape? That's a confession. That's his voice. I could hear him. I could prove it wasn't just his handwriting. I checked the time on my phone. 4:28 a.m. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Thump, thump, thump. Marcus wasn't here yet. Alistair could be pulling into the driveway right now. He could be walking up the porch steps. And honestly, I want to know what you would have done. Would you have grabbed the box and run out the back door? Into the swamp? Or would you stay? I couldn't move. I was frozen to the spot. I picked up the cassette tape. My fingers were trembling. The plastic felt greasy. I turned it over. "Play Me" was written on the other side. The smell of the nursery changed, like wet earth, like a grave. I knew I was running out of time, but I had to know. I had to hear it. I looked at the old boom box in the corner, gathering dust on the shelf. It still had a cord. I dropped the letter. My hands were shaking so hard I thought I'd dropped the tape. I needed to hear it. I needed to hear his voice. I scrambled out of the nursery. I hit the hallway. The light was flickering. I threw open the linen closet door. Old towels fell on my head. I didn't care. I dug through the shelves. My hands were shaking. Dust flew everywhere. Then I felt it. Cold, hard plastic. I pulled it out. A silver GE cassette recorder. I checked the back. 4 batteries inside. Thank God. I ran back to the nursery. I slammed the door behind me. I locked it. I sat on the floor, right next to the hollow hole. I held the recorder in my lap. It felt heavy, like holding a gun. I slid the microcassette into the slot. It clicked. Loud. I took a deep breath. My hands were sweating. I pressed play. At first, nothing. Just static. Hissing white noise. I stared at the player. The wheels were turning. Then a voice cut through. My dad. He sounded angry. "Don't do this, Alistair." I froze. My blood turned to ice. I knew that voice, but hearing it like this, it ripped me open. Then Alistair spoke. "Just sign the deed, Sean. It's over." He sounded so calm. So cold. Like he was ordering a pizza. My dad yelled, "You're a thief. You think I don't know about Vinnie?" A scuffling noise, heavy, violent, a chair scraped across the floor. I could picture the nursery. My dad fighting back. Then came the crash. Something heavy hit the floor. A sickening thud. Then silence. My heart stopped. I covered my mouth. I was shaking so hard I dropped the player. It landed on the rug. But I could still hear it. Alistair's voice, low, whispering. "Sorry, brother. The business is mine now." He killed him. He didn't just hire Vinnie. He was there. He watched him die. You know that feeling when your world just splits in two? That was me. Sitting on that floor, listening to my uncle confess to murder. The smell of wet moss suddenly filled the room. It was overpowering. Like a grave had opened up. I grabbed the player. I needed to stop it, but I needed to record it too. I fumbled for my phone. My hands were numb. I looked at the tape counter. It read 0:45. 45 seconds. That was all it took to end my father's life. I remembered the funeral, how Alistair stood there in his black suit. His shoes were so clean because he wasn't in the mud. He was in here on the hardwood. "I have to call Marcus," I whispered. I reached for my phone on the floor. But then a sound downstairs. A crash. The front door. It didn't open. It exploded inward. I stopped the tape. I felt sick. But then the front door downstairs crashed open again. He was back. And he wasn't knocking this time. The front door didn't just open, it exploded. The sound of wood splintering downstairs was like a gunshot in the quiet. I knew that sound. That was the deadbolt giving way. Then came the footsteps. Heavy boots on the hardwood. Thud, thud, thud. They weren't walking. He was running up the stairs, taking them two at a time. He was coming for me. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed the microcassette off the desk. I snatched the blue envelope with the cracked wax seal. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly dropped everything. The plastic cassette felt slick with my sweat. I shoved the tape deep into my robe pocket. I couldn't go out into the hallway. He was blocking the only exit. I scanned the nursery, looking for anywhere to go. The window? Too high. Under the bed? Too obvious. My eyes landed on the walk-in closet. The louvered doors were slightly ajar. I scrambled across the rug and threw myself inside. I pressed my back against the cold cedar wall. It smelled like mothballs and old dust. Dark. Suffocating. I pulled the door shut, leaving just a sliver of space to see through. You know that feeling when your brain just disconnects from reality? I felt like I was 7 years old again. Back in 1993. It was a Sunday afternoon. Dad was counting, his voice booming through the house. 10, 9, 8. The sun was hitting the dust motes in the air. It felt so safe then. I was hiding in this exact closet, holding my breath, waiting for him to find me. The hallway smelled like lemon polish and Dad's Old Spice. He was pretending he couldn't hear my giggles. But this wasn't a game. There was no laughter coming. Just the creak of the third step, that loose board that always squeaked. He was on the landing. Time seemed to stop. I checked my watch. 4:38 a.m. The sun wouldn't be up for another hour. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Thump, thump, thump. It was so loud. I was sure he could hear it too. The footsteps stopped, right outside the nursery door. Silence, thick, heavy silence. Then the handle turned. The latch clicked. The door swung open slowly. The hinges groaned. I saw his boots through the wooden slats. Black leather, mud caked on the soles. Just like I remembered, he stepped into the room. He was breathing heavy, ragged, like a beast. I gripped the iron poker in my hand. My knuckles were white. If he opened those doors, I was going to swing. I had to. I wasn't going down without a fight. Sire say. The voice was low, gravelly. Come out, come out. He started pacing. I could see his shadow moving across the floor. He kicked the rug. He slammed his hand against the wall. He was looking for the tape. He knew I heard it. He took a step closer to the closet, then another. The smell hit me first. Burnt vanilla and old leather, cigar smoke. It was seeping through the cracks, choking me. I know you're in here, Sarsa. His voice dropped. Got colder. You always were a predictable child. He moved the rocking chair. It creaked. That sound. It used to soothe me to sleep. Now it sounded like a death rattle. He was methodical. Checking corners. Checking under the vanity. He wasn't rushing anymore. He was enjoying the hunt. He stepped right in front of the doors. I stopped breathing, literally. My lungs were screaming. The cigar smoke was thick now, burning my eyes. Through the slats, I saw his hand reach out. It was shaking. Or maybe that was my vision blurring. I looked down at my trembling hands to check the tape. And that's when I saw it. My stomach dropped. The blue envelope. It wasn't in my pocket. It was on the floor. I must have dropped it when I dove in. It was lying there, in the gap between the doors, in plain sight, directly in his line of sight, and his black boot was inches away from it. Tell me in the comments, would you have reached for it? Because I sure as hell couldn't move. I watched his black boot grind into the floorboard. It was inches from the blue envelope. The wax seal was the color of dried blood. My heart stopped beating in my chest. The air in the closet tasted like dust and old fear. He stopped moving, his head tilted down. He saw the paper. He saw the seal. He saw the handwriting on the front. It was the deed. It was the proof of everything. He froze for a split second. I stopped breathing. You little brat. The scream ripped through the silence. It sounded like metal tearing. He lunged straight for the closet door. The handle rattled violently. I gripped the iron poker until my knuckles turned white. Sweet mother of God, he was coming right at me. I could smell him, that burnt vanilla cigar smell. It took me right back to 1994. The funeral, Dad's shoes on the stairs. I remembered them. Shiny black leather, just like Alistair's boots now. They didn't have mud on them then. They don't have mud on them now. Because he was inside. He was inside the house when Dad fell. No, that's not possible. But the shoes don't lie. I didn't think about it. My body just moved. I slammed my foot into the heavy wood door. I put everything I had into it. The door flew open. It connected hard with his face. Crunch. I heard his nose break. It was a wet, sick sound. He stumbled backward, howling in pain. I burst out of the closet. I was shaking so bad I almost dropped the poker. He was clutching his face. Bright red blood leaked between his fingers. He looked up at me. His eyes were wide and wild. I raised the poker. I was ready to swing for his head. He looked at me with pure hatred. I didn't wait. I shoved past him, knocking a porcelain vase off the dresser. It smashed on the floor. Shards of white ceramic everywhere. I ran for the French doors leading to the balcony. I could hear him slipping on the broken glass behind me. "Get back here," he yelled. I hit the balcony doors. They were swollen shut with the Georgia humidity. I used my shoulder. Pain shot down my arm, sharp and hot. The wood frame splintered. I tumbled out onto the balcony. The air was cool, heavy with the smell of wet moss and gardenias. My throat felt like sandpaper. I looked over the railing. It was a long way down to the dark garden. The magnolia trees looked like ghosts in the moonlight. The garden was black as ink. The iron ladder was there. It was old. It was covered in rust. You know that feeling when you look at a height and your stomach just drops? That was me. He's gonna kill me. I know it. But Alistair was right behind me. I heard him step onto the balcony boards. The wood creaked under his weight. I turned and threw the poker at him. I just wanted to slow him down. He batted it away. It clattered to the floor. I scrambled over the railing. My pajama pants caught on a loose nail. I ripped them free. I grabbed the cold metal of the ladder. It was freezing against my palms. The whole thing shook. Sweet mother of God, it felt loose. I moved my hands to the next rung. My fingers slipped on the dew. I gasped. I tightened my grip. I started climbing down fast. My hands were slick with sweat. The rust bit into my skin. Then I heard it. Heavy footsteps above me. He was following me. I looked up, unable to stop myself. He was leaning over the railing. His face was a silhouette against the moonlight. He wasn't my uncle anymore. He was a murderer. He raised his heavy leather boot. He was going to stomp on my fingers. I swung my body out, trying to dodge the blow. The metal groaned under my weight. Below me was the darkness of the garden. Above me, Alistair was leaning over the railing, raising a shoe to stomp on my fingers. I saw that brute coming down, heavy, leather, aimed right at my knuckles. I didn't think. I just let go. My hand slipped off the rusted metal. I was falling. The ladder scraped against my arms, sharp, burning. I think my skin peeled off. I hit the bushes, hydrangeas, wet leaves in my face. Thorns digging into my shoulders. The breath left my body. My back hit the ground. Hard. But I was alive. You know that feeling. When you realize you're not dead, it hits you different than anything else. I heard him screaming from the balcony above. "You're crazy, you psychotic bitch." His voice cracked. "I'm calling the police. They're gonna lock you up." "Let him." I had the tape. The proof was in my pocket. I scrambled to my feet. My legs were shaking. The garden was dark, shadows everywhere. The grass was soaking wet, cold seeping into my bare feet. I could hear sirens in the distance. Or was that just the wind? I couldn't tell. I ran toward the back gate, the old wooden gate Dad used to paint every summer. The latch was stuck. My fingers were slippery with blood. I yanked it. Hard, it gave way. I stumbled through onto the cobblestone street. It was 4:45 a.m. Savannah is never quiet, but this was different. The street lights were flickering. Orange light on the whetstones. My feet were bleeding now. I could feel every stone, every crack. I didn't stop. I couldn't. If you've ever been hunted, you know what I mean. Your body moves on its own. I turned onto Bull Street, the Spanish moss hanging down like ghost fingers. My lungs were burning. Cold air in my throat. I kept looking over my shoulder. Every shadow looked like him. Every car door slamming sounded like his footsteps. He was coming. I knew it. I passed Chippewa Square. The park bench from Forrest Gump was there, empty, alone, just like me. Then I saw them, blue lights, flashing, a patrol car parked on the corner. I didn't think. I just ran. I collapsed on the hood, metal cold against my hands. I started screaming, "Help me, please, you have to help me." The officer looked at me like I was insane. My hair was wild, bloody arms, barefoot. But I didn't care. I was alive, and for the first time in 30 years, I had the truth. I was screaming. I couldn't stop. The blue lights were spinning in my eyes. My hands were bleeding on the patrol car's hood. The metal was freezing cold against my skin. I thought they were taking me to jail. I really did, but then a flashlight beam hit my face. I blinked. The light moved away. Saw worse? I knew that voice. Deep, southern, calm. It was Marcus Thorne. We sat together in Mrs. Gable's English class. I flashed back to 1995. We were sitting on the hood of his Ford Mustang, drinking warm sodas, laughing so hard we couldn't breathe. The radio was playing Zombie by the Cranberries. We were young, we were safe, but here we were, 30 years later, and I was a mess. My hair was matted with moss, my feet were cut to ribbons. He drew a heavy wool blanket over my shoulders. It smelled like stale coffee and gun oil. He looked me in the eyes. He said, "Sweet Jesus Sours, what happened to you?" I tried to talk, I really did, but the words just spilled out. I sounded insane. Ghost, floorboard, murder. I knew I did. I was shaking so hard my teeth were chattering. I grabbed his uniform sleeve. I told him about the tape, the recording. I told him Alistair was trying to kill me. Marcus didn't look at the house. He looked at me like I was a junkie having a breakdown. You know that feeling? When the truth sounds like a lie? He unclipped his radio. He spoke into the mic. Subject is hysterical, possible mental health crisis. That stung. It actually hurt. I pulled the micro cassette from my pocket. It was slick with my blood. "I have it," I said. "I have the proof right here." He gently pushed my hand down. He didn't want the evidence. He wanted order. He pulled out his tablet. The screen glowed in the dark. "We got a call 20 minutes ago," he said. He turned the screen toward me. It was a dispatch report. Domestic disturbance. Trespassing. Subject, Sarastay O'Malley. I read the name at the bottom. Complainant Alistair O'Malley. That snake. He called them first. He was painting me as the intruder in my own home. And honestly, I looked the part. Barefoot, bloody, screaming at 5 a.m. Have you ever been gaslighted like that? It makes you question your own sanity. Marcus sighed. He rubbed his temples. "Look," he said, "let's get you to the precinct. We can sort this out with coffee." "No, no coffee, no precinct. We have to go back," I whispered. "The house is empty," Marcus said. "He's still there," I said. "I can feel him." Marcus looked at the road. He just wanted the shift to end. "Fine," he said. "We'll do a walkthrough, just to secure the perimeter. Then we go to the station." I climbed into the back seat. The plastic was cold. He drove slowly down Bull Street. The Spanish moss was hanging low in the headlights. It looked like ghostly fingers reaching down. I held the tape tight in my fist. We pulled up to the iron gates. They were wide open. The house loomed ahead of us. Dark, silent, all the lights were out. Alistair's Jaguar was gone. Marcus put the car in park. He killed the engine. Silence filled the cruiser. Just the ticking of the cooling motor. "See?" Marcus said, pointing at the empty driveway. He left. "It's over." He looked at me in the rearview mirror. "I told you it was just a scare." I stared at the dark windows of the nursery. The curtains weren't moving. But I knew better. Alistair doesn't leave. He waits. He was hiding in the shadows, waiting for us to walk through that front door. If this story is hitting close to home for you, I just want you to know you're not alone. And it does get better, but first it gets worse. If the story meant something to you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more stories to tell, and some of them are even worse than this one. Like this video if you made it to the end, and drop a comment, tell me what you would have done. I read every single one. The house was silent, too silent. Marcus unlocked the front door with his master key. It swung open with a low groan. I stepped into the foyer. The air inside was thick and heavy. It smelled like wet moss and that specific cigar smoke. Burnt vanilla and old leather. I grabbed Marcus's arm. My nails dug into his uniform sleeve. I'm telling you, he's still here, I whispered. Marcus just shined his flashlight down the hall. The beam cut through the dust motes. It landed on the shattered vase. White porcelain shards were scattered across the rug. Looks like a struggle, Marcus said. He sounded bored. He sounded like he was filling out a traffic ticket. We walked up the stairs. Every step groaned under our weight. I counted them in my head. 1, 2, 3. The fourth step from the top. That is where Dad fell. I could see the dark stain on the wood. Old dried blood that no cleaner ever touched. Marcus didn't even look down. He just kept walking toward the nursery door. The door was slightly ajar. I remembered locking it. I remembered Dad bolting it. We stepped into the nursery. The moonlight hit the old rocking chair. It was empty. I ran to the corner. I fell to my knees on the hardwood. The floorboard. It was still pried up. That jagged hole in the wood. But the box, gone. The microcassette, gone. My heart stopped beating. I stared into the empty, dark hole. Just shadows and dust bunnies. No, I choked out. I pounded my fist on the floor. The pain shot up my wrist. It was right here. The tape, the letter, everything. Marcus holstered his gun. He looked down at me. His eyes were full of pity. Sweersay, he sighed. He ran a hand over his buzz cut. There is nothing here, just a hole in the floor. He stood there blocking the doorway. Did you maybe misplace it or imagine it? You know that feeling when your gut is screaming at you, but your brain keeps making excuses? That was me. I am not imagining this, I yelled. My voice echoed off the empty walls. I felt the tears coming, hot and fast. I wiped them with the back of my hand. My hand was shaking so hard. Marcus knelt down beside me. He checked the floorboard with his gloved fingers. Splinters are old, he said. This has been open for years. I shook my head violently. Years? No, I pried it open tonight. He stood up slowly. Maybe you are having an episode. You know, with the anniversary and all. The gaslighting. It was suffocating, and this is where it gets really messed up. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. I pulled it out. My hands were sweating against the glass screen. A notification popped up, a text message from an unknown number. I tapped it open. The message was short. Checkers is a fun game, isn't it? Keep your mouth shut. A cold chill ran down my spine. He was watching. He took the tape, and now he was taunting me. I shoved the phone back in my pocket. I looked at the hole again. Marcus was looking at me like I was crazy, like I was a charity case he needed to handle. Then I saw it. A glint of white in the darkness. Caught on the rusty nail sticking out of the joist. I leaned in close. It was paper. A small torn piece of paper. I pinched it between my fingers and pulled it loose. It was thick, expensive paper. The kind Dad used for legal documents. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Just 3 words. The deed is. That was it. He missed a piece. He missed the proof. I wrapped my bleeding fingers around the rusty nail. It was rough, jagged. It bit into my skin as I twisted it. I felt the wood give. Then came the sound of paper tearing. I pulled the scrap away from the cedar plank. It was stiff. Yellowed, it smelled like mold and old dust. I held it under Marcus's flashlight beam. The light was blinding. I squinted at the handwriting. It was my dad's writing. No doubt about it. The deed is. And then, below the tear, the signature. Vinnie. Just Vinnie, but it was enough. It proved the letter existed. I spun around to face Marcus. He was standing by the door. His arms were crossed. He looked at me like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Look at it, I yelled. My voice echoed in the empty nursery. I shoved the paper into his hand. Read the name, Marcus. Tell me that isn't real. He sighed. A heavy, annoyed sound. He took the paper. He held it up to the light. He was just humoring me. I could see it on his face. Then his eyes stopped moving. He froze. The air in the room felt heavy. You could hear the wind outside, whistling through the cracks in the window frame. Marcus's face went white, not pale. White, like he'd seen a ghost. Vinnie, he whispered. Yes, I said. Vinnie, he looked at me. Then back at the paper. Vinnie Moretti, he said. The name meant something to him. It meant something big. I didn't know who that was. I just knew it wasn't a name you find in a fairy tale. Who is Vinnie? I asked. Marcus swallowed hard. He forgot he was supposed to be the skeptical cop. He was a heavy hitter, Marcus said, back in the 90s. Enforcer for the mob down on River Street. I felt my stomach drop. My dad wasn't pushed by a random burglar. He was murdered by a professional. And Alistair hired him. I leaned against the wall. The wallpaper was peeling under my shoulder. He's the one on the tape, I said. The one Alistair was talking to. Marcus nodded. He was finally connecting the dots. But he's gone, I said. He's probably dead. I felt the hope slipping away. It was too late. It was always too late. No, Marcus said. He's not dead. He looked up from the paper. He turned informant, Marcus said. Witness protection took him in 98. Sweet mother of God. A witness. There was actually a witness alive. So he's safe, I said. Alistair can't get to him. Marcus shook his head. Not exactly, he said. He checked his holster. A nervous tick. He got kicked out, Marcus said, 3 years ago. I couldn't breathe. Why? I asked. Running a gambling ring, Marcus said. Violated his agreement. They cut him loose. So he was out there. Somewhere. Free. And Alistair didn't know he was back. You know that feeling when you realize you actually have a chance? That was this moment. But we had to be fast. Before Alistair found out too. If we can find Vinnie, Marcus said, we can bury Alistair. He looked me in the eye. We can put him away for what he did to your dad. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. Where is he? I asked. Where do we start? Marcus holstered his gun. He walked toward the hallway. He lives in Tybee, Marcus said. If this story meant something to you, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I've got more to tell you. And this ride is far from over. Like this video if you made it to the end. And drop a comment. Tell me what you would do. I read every single one. I didn't wait for Marcus to open my door. I just climbed into the passenger seat and slammed it shut. The inside of the cruiser smelled like stale coffee and old gun oil. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely buckle the seatbelt. Marcus floored the gas. The tires spun on the gravel driveway, spitting dust everywhere. We shot out onto Bull Street. I watched the house disappear in the side mirror. It looked like a dark mouth swallowing the night. Sweet mother of God, I was actually leaving. But my brain was stuck on that tape. And on Mom. It was 5:40 a.m. The sky was turning that bruised purple color right before the sun comes up. We were flying down Highway 80 toward Tybee Island. The marsh grass on either side of the road was glowing silver in the headlights. I kept clutching the pocket of my jeans. The microcassette was still there, pressing against my thigh through the denim. It felt heavy, like a brick. You know that feeling when you realize your whole life was a script written by someone else? That was me. I always thought Mom was weak. I thought she just broke after Dad died. That she let Alistair win. But why keep the tape? If she was so scared, why not destroy it? Or give it to the police? It didn't make sense. Unless she used it. I looked at Marcus. He was gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. The engine was roaring. We must have been doing 90. He didn't know. Nobody knew. Suddenly, I was back in the kitchen. It was 2005. I was home from college for the summer. The air conditioning was broken. It was stifling hot. Mom was sitting at the oak table. There was a stack of envelopes in front of her. But one was different. It was a check. I saw the signature. Alistair. She picked up a pair of sewing scissors. She started cutting the check into tiny little ribbons. Snip, snip, snip. I remember asking her why she didn't cash it. She looked at me. Her eyes were red and puffy. We don't take his blood money, Saoirse, she said. But then she cried. She cried for an hour at that table. In the car, the memory hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't crying because she was sad. She was crying because she had to. She wasn't destroying the check to be noble. She was doing it because she'd already cashed the real one, the one she didn't show me. Oh my God. It wasn't grief. It was guilt. Alistair wasn't sending money out of the kindness of his black heart. He was paying rent. He was paying her to stay quiet. That tape, that was her insurance policy. Every time he threatened to cut us off, she'd remind him, I have the recording, Ali. She made a deal with the devil. She traded my father's justice for a roof over our heads, for my tuition, for our food. She wasn't a victim. She was a warden, and I was the prisoner living in the gilded cage. The humidity in the car was suffocating. I rolled down the window. The air smelled like salt water and dead crabs. It smelled just like that night in 1994. I want to know what you guys think. Could you do it? Could you live with a killer just to keep your child safe? Because I don't know if I'm strong enough to forgive that. Tell me in the comments, honestly. What would you have done? She sacrificed my relationship with my uncle, my reputation, my sanity, just to keep a roof over my head. Alistair didn't just kill Dad, he killed Mom's soul. We flew down Highway 80 with the marsh grass blurring past the windows. Marcus was gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. I looked at the clock on the dashboard. 6:12 a.m. We had to get there before Alistair did. You know that feeling when you're driving toward a cliff edge and you can't hit the brakes? That is exactly how I felt. The sun was just starting to bleed into the horizon, turning the sky a bruised purple. It felt like the world was holding its breath. We took the sharp turn onto the back road. The scenery shifted from historic mansions to rusted trailers and overgrown lots. This was the Tybee tourists didn't see. The GPS dinged. Destination on the left. I saw a mailbox tilted at a weird angle. The numbers were barely visible. 14B. We pulled into a gravel driveway full of deep potholes. The car bounced violently, and there it was. Vinnie's shack. It looked like a strong wind could knock it over. The siding was gray and rotting. There was junk everywhere. Old boat motors, fishing nets, and rusty crab traps. It was a hoarder's paradise. Marcus killed the engine. The silence was heavy. I could hear the distant cry of seagulls and the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. I took a deep breath. I opened the car door. The air smelled like low tide and diesel fuel. I walked up the rotting wooden steps. There was a plastic pink flamingo on the porch. It was missing its head. Somehow, that felt like a bad omen. Marcus stood right behind me. He had his hand near his holster. He knocked on the screen door. It was loud in the quiet morning. We waited. Nothing happened. Marcus knocked again. Harder. Then I heard it. A sound like a dying engine. A wet, heavy cough from inside the house. I pushed the screen door open. It squeaked on rusty hinges. We stepped into the darkness. The smell hit me instantly. It was stale cigarettes, old paper, and something medical. It smelled like sickness and decay. I could barely see through the clutter. There were stacks of newspapers reaching the ceiling. Pizza boxes were piled like towers against the wall. In the corner, an old recliner chair faced a static-filled TV. And there was Vinnie. He looked like a skeleton wrapped in plastic skin. He was frail. So much smaller than the monster in my head. A clear tube ran under his nose. It was connected to a silver oxygen tank. The tank made a rhythmic hissing sound. Hiss. Click. Hiss. He looked at us with sunken, yellow eyes. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed. I felt a flash of anger. This man killed my father, and he was annoyed? I stepped forward. My shoes crunched on a pile of old receipts. Vincent Moretti? I asked. He stared at me. Then he hacked up some phlegm. It was a disgusting sound. Get out, he rasped. His voice was barely a whisper. Marcus stepped up. We need to talk about 1994, Vinnie. Vinnie laughed, a dry, rattling sound. I don't know nothing about nothing. He waved a trembling hand at us. I think you have the wrong house. I looked at Marcus. I knew we had to scare him. I reached into my pocket. My fingers brushed against the cold metal of my phone. I pulled it out. I had recorded myself earlier. I knew the tape itself was too dangerous to play here. But I had recorded my own voice describing it. I described the sounds I heard on that cassette. I pressed the play button. My voice filled the room. It sounded shaky, even to me. I said, a man with a voice like gravel ordering a hit. I said, he sounded rich. He sounded entitled. Then I quoted Alistair directly. I said, make it look like an accident on the stairs. Vinnie froze. His hands stopped trembling. He stared at my phone. The oxygen tank kept hissing in the silence. Hiss. Click. Hiss. Ali, Vinnie whispered. That's Ali. He looked at me with genuine fear now. Where did you get that? My mother had it, I said. Maeve, he said. He shook his head slowly. Tough lady. Tougher than she looked. I felt a lump in my throat. I didn't want to hear about her toughness. I wanted the truth. Did you do it? I asked. Did you push him? Vinnie looked down at his lap. He picked at a loose thread on his blanket. He didn't answer. But his silence was an answer. My knees felt weak. I reached out and steadied myself on a stack of magazines. They were from 1994, the year my father died. Vinnie looked up at me. His eyes were watery and red. He leaned forward in the chair. The movement caused the oxygen tube to tug. I kept the ledger, Vinnie wheezed. I blinked. What ledger? The old lady? Maeve. She paid me to keep it safe. He coughed again, a long hacking fit. Alistair doesn't know I have it. My heart stopped. A ledger? Proof? Where is it? Then he pointed a shaking finger toward the door. It's in the safe at the bait shop. Vinnie said, the bait shop. We didn't waste a second. We ran to the cruiser and Marcus threw it into gear. The engine roared to life. We peeled out of the gravel driveway, spinning tires. I was hyperventilating in the passenger seat. My hands were clenched so tight my fingernails dug into my palms. The sun was fully up by the time we hit the causeway. The Atlantic looked calm on my left, a stark contrast to the storm inside me. We pulled up to Captain Sal's Bait and Tackle. It was a shack on stilts over the marsh. The paint was peeling in long gray strips. The windows were coated in thick salt grime. A neon sign buzzed overhead. A dead fly was stuck inside the glass of the open sign. It was flickering. Marcus kicked the door in. The lock splintered instantly. The smell hit us like a punch. Rotting shrimp. Diesel fuel. Old tobacco. It was suffocating. We stepped over a pile of soggy cardboard boxes. There was a counter covered in dust. I saw the safe immediately. It was set into the floorboards behind the register. A round dial rusted shut. Marcus knelt down. He pulled a small stethoscope from his kit. You know that feeling when time stands still? That was this moment. He turned the dial. Left, right? Left again. Click, the handle spun. He pulled the heavy steel door open. Inside sat a single green ledger book. It looked harmless. Just a notebook. But it felt heavier than lead when I pulled it out. I opened it. The paper was yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was distinct, precise. Looping letters. It was Alistair's. The first entry was dated November 4th, 1994, 4 days after my father died. It read, payment to VM, retainer, $10,000. The memo line said one word, silence. I flipped the pages. My hands were shaking so hard the book rattled. December 1st. Consulting fee. $2,500. January 1st. Grounds maintenance, $2,500. It went on for 30 years. Page after page after page, every month. A check written to Vinnie Moretti, $500,000 in total. It was a paper trail of blood money. Marcus looked over my shoulder. His face went pale. He took the book from me gently. He pulled out his radio. He keyed the mic. His voice didn't waver. Dispatch. This is Thorne. I need an arrest warrant issued immediately. For Alistair O'Malley. Charges, murder 1 and conspiracy to commit fraud. The radio crackled back. Warrant number 4191 issued. Copy that. We just looked at each other. It was over. We had him. The evidence was right there in my hands. I sat down on a bucket of minnows. I finally let myself breathe. The terror faded. Relief washed over me. We won. We drove back to the city feeling like heroes. The sun was shining. The radio was playing. I actually smiled, but that smile died the moment we turned onto Bull Street. You could see the smoke from 3 blocks away. Thick, black pillars of it rising into the sky. Marcus floored the accelerator. The siren wailed. We screeched around the corner onto my street. The house was glowing. Not with lights, with fire. The tires screeched on the pavement. We skidded to a halt right in front of the iron gates. Smoke. Thick black smoke was pouring out of the roof. It wasn't just a fire, it was a funeral pyre. My stomach dropped into my feet. I couldn't breathe. Marcus was out of the car before it even stopped moving. He yelled, "Stay here." I didn't listen. I kicked the door open. The heat hit me like a physical blow. It was intense. It dried out my eyes instantly. The magnolia tree in the front yard was already charred. The leaves were curling up and turning to dust right in front of me. Sweet mother of God, he actually did it. There on the lawn stood Alistair. He was wearing that ridiculous smoking jacket, like a villain from a bad movie. He was watching the flames dance, like it was entertainment for him. I clutched the ledger to my chest. It was the only thing that mattered now. The green leather felt like a shield against the chaos. Alistair turned his head slowly. He saw me standing by the cruiser. He didn't look scared. He looked ecstatic. You wanted the house, Sour say? He screamed over the crackling wood. Here it is. It's all yours now. He threw his head back and laughed. It was the most chilling sound I have ever heard. I remembered Dad's laugh. It was warm. It was safe. Flashback to 1992. The living room. Dad was kneeling by the hearth. He was stacking logs carefully. Careful now, he said, striking a match. Fire is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. Alistair was the master of the spire, and he was terrible. The flames licked at the second floor, the nursery, where Mom hid the key, where I found the box. It was all going up in smoke. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it at first. Then it buzzed again and again. I looked at the screen. A notification from the local news app. Breaking, massive fire reported on Bull Street. There was a picture attached. Someone was live streaming it. Historic Savannah estate engulfed in flames. Hundreds of people were watching my home burn in real time. Look at it burn, Alistair yelled. He spread his arms wide. The evidence, the floorboards, the lies. It's all turning to ash. He thought he was safe. He thought he won. You know that feeling when you realize the villain in your story is actually just a stupid, arrogant man? That was this moment. Marcus was on the radio shouting dispatch codes. Structure fire. Possible arson suspect unseen. He drew his gun. Alistair, step away from the house. Alistair didn't even flinch. He just kept looking at me. It's over, Sour Sea, he said. You have nothing. I felt the rage bubbling up in my throat. It wasn't hot anymore. I was cold. I took a step forward. The gravel crunched under my boots. You think you're smart, I said. My voice was shaking. Not from fear. From pure, unadulterated anger. You think burning wood makes you innocent? I looked at the house. The window of my old bedroom shattered. Glass rained down on the porch. I remembered the smell of old paper and wet moss in the nursery. I remembered the sound of the micro cassette tape. None of that mattered anymore. I had the source. I had the proof in my hands. Alistair smirked. Give it up. You're just a crazy woman obsessed with the past. That's when I snapped. I walked right up to the edge of the driveway. The heat singed my eyebrows. I could feel it blistering my skin. I didn't care. I held up the green ledger. I waved it in front of his face. The movement caught the light of the flames. The gold lettering on the spine sparkled. Alistair froze. His eyes went wide. They darted to the book, then back to my face. The color drained from his cheeks. What is that? He whispered. The bravado was gone. I stepped closer. The smoke was swirling around us. You burned the wood, Alistair, I said. My voice cut through the sirens, through the roar of the fire. But you forgot the numbers. You paid him every month for 30 years. And now, everyone is going to see exactly how much you paid to have my dad killed. And that is where we stood, while my world burned behind me. The heat was suffocating. It felt like the air was literally on fire. My clothes were starting to feel hot to the touch. I could hear the roof timbers cracking inside the house. It sounded like bones breaking. Alistair stared at the ledger. His eyes were wide. He looked terrified. For the first time in my life, he looked small. He looked weak. Then he snapped. He screamed and lunged right at me. He didn't care about the fire. He wanted that book. He wanted to destroy it. I braced myself. I couldn't move. My feet were glued to the gravel driveway. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Marcus stepped in. He's a big guy. He caught Alistair by the collar. They slammed into the patrol car. The impact shook the whole vehicle. I heard the metal dent. It was a sickening crunch. You could smell the exhaust mixing with the smoke. Marcus spun him around. He had Alistair face down on the hood. The siren lights were flashing red and blue in their eyes. It looked like a disco from hell. You know that feeling when time just stops? That's what it was like. Everything went silent except for the fire. Marcus pulled the handcuffs from his belt. Click, click. Alistair was cuffed. The metal bit into his wrists. He was thrashing. He was screaming about lawyers. He called Marcus a rent-a-cop. Marcus just shoved him harder into the hood. Then Alistair turned his head. He looked right at me. He hawked up spit and launched it at my face. It landed on my cheek. It was warm and wet. I wanted to vomit right there in the driveway. He smiled. It was the most evil thing I've ever seen. He said, "You're just like her, a viper." He started laughing, a dry, wheezing laugh. He yelled, "You think she's a hero? She was crazy. The ghost wasn't real." I froze. The ghost wasn't real? I felt the cold spot in the nursery. I saw the rocking chair move. I heard her crying. He kept yelling. She heard voices. She was insane. I paid her to keep her quiet. I realized something. He broke in 30 years ago. He tore the place apart looking for the deed. He found the letters Mom hid. He found the cash box under the floorboard. I saw the broken lock. He took the cash. He took the letters. But he left the tape. He never even knew it was there. He never heard his own voice on that cassette. Can you imagine that? He paid $500,000 to hide a crime, and the evidence he feared most was sitting right under his nose. Marcus dragged him toward the back door. Alistair's feet were dragging in the dirt. He was still kicking. The fire was getting closer. A piece of the gutter fell off. It hit the driveway and shattered. Sparks flew everywhere. I looked down at the green ledger in my hands. My dad's handwriting was on the front. It was covered in soot. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. If you've ever held a piece of evidence like that, you know. It's heavy. It's heavier than it should be. It's the weight of a life. The fire trucks finally rounded the corner. The sirens were deafening. They were screaming down Bull Street. The water from the hoses hit the house. Steam exploded into the air. I watched Marcus shove Alistair into the back seat. He slammed the door. The silence was instant. Alistair was banging on the window. I watched the taillights disappear down the street. It was over. He was gone. But something felt wrong. But then my brain kicked back in. I looked at the burning nursery window. The glass was melting. The box. The rusty cash box with the initials SO. I opened it 2 days ago. It was empty. The tape was gone. The microcassette was gone. I remember thinking Alistair took it, but he just admitted he didn't know about the tape. He only found the letters, so the lock wasn't broken by Alistair. He didn't have the tape. If Alistair didn't take the tape, who did? If this story is hitting you as hard as it hit me, I need you to do something. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications. Because I am not done telling you what happened next. Like this video if you're still here with me, and drop a comment. Tell me who you think took that tape. Because I have no idea, and I'm terrified to find out. The fire trucks were finally rolling away. The red lights were still spinning against the old oak trees. All I could hear was the loud hiss of water hitting hot wood. Steam was rising up in thick white clouds from the wet ashes. The air smelled like wet charcoal and burnt insulation. I wrapped my arms around myself. The heat from the fire was gone. The morning air was freezing. I was just standing there, staring at the black hole where the nursery used to be. My boots were sunk deep in the gray mud. You know that feeling when you're being watched? I felt it right then. I felt a heavy weight on my right shoulder. It wasn't a branch or a gust of wind. It was a palm. Pressing down firmly, I spun around fast, expecting to see Marcus standing there. But Marcus was by the police car, 20 feet away. He was leaning against the door, writing something on his clipboard. Alistair was in the back seat, his head pressed against the glass. I looked back behind me. There was no one there, just the wet smoke curling up into the Spanish moss. I looked down at the ground, confused. A piece of the banister was laying next to my foot. It was split right down the middle. I kicked a chunk of wet sheetrock away with my boot. Underneath the debris, I saw a dull glint of brass. I knelt down in the sludge. My jeans soaked up the freezing water instantly. I brushed away a layer of black ash with my bare hand. There it was. The cash box. It was scorched. The metal was blackened on the edges. But the shape was unmistakable. I told myself it was impossible. I thought Alistair took it. I thought the mystery thief stole it weeks ago, but it was here the whole time. It must have slid under the bed frame during the fight. It survived the fire. It survived 30 years. I picked it up. It was heavy in my hand. The SO initials were tarnished, but I could feel them under the soot. I didn't need a key. The lock was already broken from years ago. I pried the lid open with my thumbs. Inside, wrapped in a dry cleaner bag, was the tape. The plastic was warped from the heat, but the magnetic tape inside looked solid. I turned it over in my hands. The label was peeling, but I could read it. The negotiation. It's funny, but the smell of the smoke changed for a second. For a moment, it didn't smell like a fire. It smelled like lavender and old wood. I closed my eyes. I was 7 years old again. I was sitting on the velvet stool in the nursery. Mom was behind me, brushing my hair. She was humming that same lullaby she always hummed. She looked at me in the mirror and smiled. She looked so peaceful then. She wasn't the scared woman I remembered. She was fierce. She was protecting me. I want to ask you guys something. Do you believe in signs, or do you think it's just coincidence? Because I don't know what to believe anymore. I looked up at the sky. The flames were gone. The house was gone, but I had the truth. Mom didn't show me the floorboard to get revenge. She showed me the floorboard so I could finally let her go. I'm sitting on a bench on River Street right now. It's 6:02 a.m. The sun is just coming up over the water. It's actually beautiful. The sky is turning this soft shade of pink. I have a styrofoam cup of coffee in my hand. It's lukewarm, but I don't mind. For the first time in 30 years, I'm not looking over my shoulder. You know that feeling when you finally put down a heavy load you've been carrying forever? That's this. The fire truck's left an hour ago. The house is just a frame now. Charred wood and ash. But honestly, it doesn't feel like a loss. It feels like a clean break. I have the insurance adjuster coming at noon. And I have the truth. Alistair is in the Chatham County Jail. No bail. Marcus called me 20 minutes ago. The district attorney played the tape. The confession is clear. My dad's voice is on there. Alistair's voice is on there. It's over. I reached into my pocket just now and felt the plastic case of the microcassette. It's warped from the heat, a little melted on one corner, but it played. That's all that matters. I looked at the river water churning below the railing. The smell of salt and old shrimp is in the air. It's a good smell. It's real. I keep thinking about my mom, about Maeve. I was so angry at her for so long I thought she was weak. I thought she let him win. But sitting here watching the light hit the cobblestones, I get it now. She wasn't protecting Alistair. She was protecting me. She kept a roof over my head. She kept food on the table, and she made sure the monster paid for it every single month. That ledger? That was her doing too. She played the long game, and she won. I closed my eyes for a second and took a deep breath. For just a second, I swear I smelled lavender, her perfume. It was gone in a heartbeat. Just the river smell again, but I smiled. I whispered, "Thank you." Some people ask me if I'm sad about the house. I tell them no, because the house was just wooden bricks. The home? The home was right here in my hands all along. I'm going to be okay. And if you're stuck in your own dark story right now, just hold on. Morning does come. Eventually the sun always rises. I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to let go of something painful to find peace? I read every single one. If this story hit you, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Drop a like if you made it to the end with me. And please, share this. Someone out there needs to know they aren't alone.